Hello everyone, this is HuskyStarcraft here, back with some more StarCraft 2 Heart of the Swarm action. This time in the top left side, it is going to be Whitera. And down the bottom right side, it is going to be Algorithm, which I think is spelled a little bit incorrectly, but that's fine. We're not going to give him a hard time about it because he's playing Terran, which means he will most likely be making Widow Mines in this game. Now, one of the things I want to mention is that a lot of people did say, Husky, I want you to cast some more Protoss versus Terran. We've already seen Terran go up against a lot of Zerg using Widow Mines almost every single game. Show us something different. Well, I've been waiting about as long as you guys have been to find a good replay, so hopefully this one is going to fit that description. Of course, I don't really watch games before I end up casting them, but I imagine that we are going to be seeing Widow Mines on the way from Algorithm. Now, one thing I'm kind of... Yes, we definitely are going to be, as we do see a refinery on the way already. Now, one thing I'm kind of curious about is, did Blizzard make the Widow Mine so powerful so that players use it a lot so we can kind of see the functionality of it and how players can deal with it? I actually have no idea. Do they think it's overpowered? We are about to find out. I'm sure there's going to be a patch either sometime this week or sometime next week, because I think that the Widow Mine patch, wasn't that this week? Either way, it was very relatively soon, so wouldn't be surprised to see them go ahead and change that up quite a bit. One thing I also want to mention is Blizzard has been talking about changes to Protoss, making changes to the Void Ray, things like that, so we'll see exactly how that shapes up. But right now, the Mothership Core is a very useful unit. Those look at the probe right here. Got to be spotting this barracks and think that something a little bit is out of place here, which it is going to be true because this barracks is delayed. You compare it to where the gateway is at, and it's not even nearly done yet, like the barracks is still got a ways to go here. Now, what exactly is Whitera going to do? He already has his gas up. Does he throw down a Cyber Core? Yes, he does. Goes for that Cyber Core right away. Now, this is really suspicious to Whitera because he's scouting around the main base. He sees that there's gas. He sees that there's 2 probes on gas, which leaves a lot of gas to be used for units. Even though there's only 2 there, that is enough for a Widow Mine. So all of a sudden, Whitera is already beginning to think, okay, what exactly is going on here? You can see he immediately begins to scout out with his probe. Might actually spot this proxy factory right away. And that's going to be a huge, huge loss here for Algorithm because, I mean, it basically means he's not going to be able to complete it here. Oh no, the probe changes course, is going to be going to the watchtower instead. He grabs that right there to see exactly what he can see. Unfortunately for him, it is not where that factory is going to be, but keep an eye on this division right here. Is he going to do it? Oh, barely managing to find that factory here on the high ground, and I think he will be able to finish this, though. So this game is going to be getting underway right away, and this is the kind of stuff that you're seeing a lot on the HotS ladder, is people abusing these Widow Mines over and over and over again. You got to remember, the Widow Mines only take 40 in-game seconds to build. There's 75 minerals, 25 gas, and if you don't have detection right away as Protoss, then you are in a world of hurt. And you know what? This Widow Mine is actually going to be here before there's any kind of detection out, so it's going to be some guaranteed damage right now, which means that Whitera has to micro very carefully, has to keep his Stalkers and his Zealots away from the Widow Mine. Now, the problem for Whitera right now, though, is that he can't kill his factory before one Widow Mine, possibly a second one, actually ends up finishing. Now, the factory is going to go ahead and lift off, land on the low ground, maybe juke these units just a little bit, but look at the timing of this. Imagine if Whitera didn't scout this. This actually you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the Proxy Reapers. Oh, need to be careful here. And the probes. Good night, sweet prince, as those all get taken out, every single one right there. And this actually reminds me a lot of the Proxy Reapers back in the beta, and even I think, was it after the game came out? I definitely think it was, where you could get a Reaper out before a Stalker got out, and that means that, you know, in this case, he has to get an Observer. And imagine if he misclicks the Observer and loses it right away, then he's going to be in even more of a world of hurt. So I gotta say, there's no other way to say it, but if you can get a burrowed unit that shoots anything in the game into your opponent's base before they're able to even get out an Observer, if they're rushing directly to Observer, then there's definitely something wrong there. So we'll see if Whitera can actually manage to hold this out for now. The Observer's got to be careful, and nope! Takes out the Observer, so now he has to build another one to help deny any sort of attack from moving forward here with these Widow Mines. Does decide to move this Widow Mine upwards just a little bit. He does have a third Widow Mine on the way now. Now, once his Observer is out, he should be just fine. But you also have to remember that if he camps these Widow Mines right by the robotics, and he could actually potentially kill them off. So right now, this Widow Mine tries to move forward, does get taken out. The second one gets taken out as well. Whitera managing to clean that up. You can see units lost heavily favoring Whitera, although Widow Mines still do not show up in that units lost tab here. And this Widow Mine is going to go ahead and head back on home. So, honestly, that was some pretty good damage, though. Workers killed 5, units killed 7. which I guess Widow Mines don't count as a unit, and that's why they don't show up in the units lost tab. But he did, of course, lose those 2 units. Now, we do have a Warp Prism with Gravitic Drive, and I'm honestly very, very surprised to see this. And you know why? Because if he puts just one Widow Mine kind of in the corner of his base, he could kill a Warp Prism full of units, and it does. I think it one-shots them, actually. If they are at 200, so maybe not. But either way, it's very easy to clean that up. Yep, it's 160. So just getting out one more should be able to one-shot. Although, do they one-shot him? Because does the splash damage count into that? I don't think so. Splash damage from its unstable payload. Well, we'll keep an eye out for that, see if he does manage to get enough of them up to deny any sort of harassment like that. We are going to be seeing a natural go down here for Whitera pretty soon. It does look like he has just enough minerals right now. Got to go ahead and throw that down. Just needs to make sure to keep making those workers. Algorithm, though, he's going to be in great shape. It'll just kind of sit back, macro off of the base that he's got. I mean, look at this. He's got the same amount of workers, which is always a good situation for Terran to be in. He is an expansion ahead, and that's going to be the entire duration of this expansion building, is how far ahead he actually is. Now, the Warp Prism with Warp Prism speed is now done. Could easily load inside the main base. That's exactly what he's going to do. Does he load the Zealots on top of it? How exactly this is going to work out? Decides to go for mostly Stalkers here. 2 Stalkers in this army, and 1 Zealot right here hacking away at an SCV or 2, and that is going to transfer those units away. But this does tell Whitera that, hey, there is an expansion up if you didn't know. And this expansion right here, though, this 3rd command center is going to be delayed by quite some time. The siege tank here should be able to deal with this quite easily, and the Warp Prism can get out of there safely. So he's got to be just fine here, but the SCVs need to get back to work. 1 SCV needs to begin building on here. And there he goes right there, transferring those workers back down to the mineral line. But he does still have this expansion up and running right now. Needs to make sure, though, that his crisis management's good, because these SCVs have got to get back to work right now. Every second that goes by, he is losing more and more money, but is producing 2 of them at a time, plus his 3rd one is now done. So 3 orbitals will be absolutely huge if he decides to go for that route, and is going to go ahead and drop these units right inside the main base. Could opt to warp in more units if he decides to. He's got to be careful, though, with the positioning of that Warp Prism, because if it's in a bad spot, the Marines will be able to clean it out, and saves every single Stalker here. Great control there by Whitera. He's going to continue to try and do some damage, killing off that Marine before lifting up that Stalker once again. He will spot, however, that these Hellions are now out, which he knows that there's probably not going to be battle Hellions just yet. These SCVs could easily get back to work here. I think he was a little paranoid about an attack coming from the front and was unable to defend the attack coming from the skies. Instead, looks like the Stalkers are going to go down. The Siege Tank's going to get over here as well. He does have to be careful of that splash damage, though. If the Stalkers decide to run into the mineral line, then that's going to be doing lots and lots of damage there. The Warp Prism's got to be careful here. A little bit of anti-air, and continuing with the special attacks right now, he's actually going to be able to secure a 3rd base here, so his 3rd base timing will be ahead of that of his opponents, showing you just how annoying Stalker drops can be. I would have never thought that they'd be this powerful, but you got to remember, if you're sitting back and thinking, well, where's the Viking? Why is he not having a Viking here to deal with this? You have to remember that he went for the mech play because of the Widow Mine. So really, Whitera is punishing the new playstyle of these players, not going for the same old status quo of Protoss of trying to get a big death ball, but instead really trying to punish the new builds that the new Terrans are using. So definitely something to keep in mind there. That's exactly why you do not see a Viking out just yet, because he's got to focus on getting out some attacking units, which means that he has to cut those Stargate units, because you got to remember, it's not like he's going to make a Stargate for Medivacs, because he's got to be going for mech here. We already saw Hellions, we already saw Siege Tanks. Some missile turrets are now on the way, but at the same time, are they even going to be that useful in dealing with a Warp Prism? I don't know if that's the answer, but right now he's going to do everything he can to try and delay this as much as he possibly can. Whitera, though, is going to end up losing several of his units here, but with some micro on this Stalker, might be able to kill off that Siege Tank, and he is going to go for it. The tank right here, though, does manage to get repaired. He will have to escape on out. His Stalker, I think, could have done it if he wanted to overcommit, but for now, decides to go ahead and drop it right here. He is going to drop it on top of the Siege Tank, trying to do splash damage here to absorb as much damage as possible, but also focus down that tank a little bit. He does have his 3rd base now completed. The Warp Prism almost getting taken out here, but now the missile turrets are established, so I feel like if Algorithm just sits back, focuses, he's going to be able to macro on the back of this. He's also got the double armory on the way. We haven't taken a look at Camp Whitera in a little bit. He's finally upgrading some extra warp gates. He's got double forge on the way. Thermal lance is on the way. More Colossus going to be out as well. And you got to remember that with no Vikings on the field, it is going to be relatively tough. I mean, this mech style that we've seen a lot of Terran players do recently has no anti-air, so that also means that there's no Vikings to deal with those Colossus. It's going to rely purely on siege tanks, but at the same time, the Protoss army is basically invulnerable to siege tank splash damage if you're able just to get right on top of those siege tanks. I mean, you got the Zealots running into absorbing a lot of the first shots anyway, so I don't know if this is the correct choice, but we have seen a lot of players go mech. We have seen players try and try again to make it work, and we're going to see if we can have that happen here today, as we do have 2 tech labs now on the way for those factories that will allow, of course, for the Thor production. action. There is not going to be any Warhound or anything like that, but it does look like the War Prism here may be in a lot of trouble if he's not careful, but man, those things have a lot of HP at this point. It's going to go ahead and unload the remainder of these. Could warp in a big wave of units if he decides to just try and delay the mining as much as he possibly can. Could go for the upgrades as well, which we do have 1-1 on the way, as well as Blue Flame Hellion here. So definitely going to have to keep an eye on those upgrades. Can he get them out in time? Is his army going to be strong enough here? But you got to remember that Whitera, I mean, he's played this game before. He knows what's going on, and he knows that, you know, if he sticks with pure mech, then Immortals are going to be great. Colossus with range will be great, and if he can gain air superiority and keep it, then he's going to be in even better shape. These tanks right here are having one hell of a time dealing with these Zealots right now. Might even be able to kill off one more of these tanks. The Hellion here could join in on this fight and help clean this out quite easily. Yep, those Zealots are indeed going to get taken out here. So both players really struggling here moving forward. Now, Whitera is tying up the units lost out. That does include those 3 Widow Mines that have since died. So has managed to even up a little bit. There's that third base going down, but the siege tank count getting relatively high. But again, the thing is that siege tanks just are not good versus Protoss, because if you think back to the Brood War era, siege tanks were phenomenal versus Protoss. It was really up to the Protoss to make the engagements work accordingly. But now, I mean, the tides have turned. The coin has flipped. Protoss has adapted. They made things called Immortals and are able to defend, basically are able to crush through these meching armies. So you see players trying to rely on the Widow Mines in the early game. It does pinpoint them into going for a mech style build, so that's gonna be tough for him to ever break out of basically what he kind of set himself up for. It's not like he can really switch to Mass Marine Marauder at this point, but what he does need is some Thors, what he does need is some Vikings, and right now he's going to go ahead and start supplementing this army with some Vikings. Should have the rally point set over here. Yes, he does to that War Prism. This War Prism will most likely get taken out, and I feel like Whitera knows that there's not a whole lot he can really do with this War Prism anymore. I mean, maybe, just maybe, he can warp in units up here if there's a blind spot, maybe just right on this little ledge right here to begin attacking units during a major engagement, but I think these Vikings are about to spawn any second here. Should be able to take those out. The War Prism just doing a dance of its own. And the Colossus count, though, is looking mighty fine. We also have Void Rays on the way, so never a standard build here for Whitera, as he does have 2 Void Rays now on the way. And down goes the War Prism. That's not even that big of a deal, though, because it's already dealt the damage that it needed to. It's already gotten the scouting intelligence that it needed to. And yeah, having a War Prism is nice, but at the same time, at the end of the day, it's not going to affect your army composition that much. It's the Void Rays we're looking at that are very peculiar. We also have +1 attack on the way here for those units. And what are we attacking? There's something going on. I guess there is going to be an Observer getting taken out right there. Down the Observer goes, but we do have 2-2 now on the way here for Algorithm, so he thinks that he's figured out the math equation to defeat Whitera. Har har. And is it going to be that many units? Oh, he's saying show off here. I'm not actually sure what we're showing off right now, but either way, oh, there's the shots, as he's going to go ahead and take down those destructible rocks. But my god, we have a 4th and a 5th base on the way for Whitera. You almost never see this as Protoss. It's so difficult to actually make that work. Blue Flame has been done for a while. 1-1 is done. What's Whitera sitting at? He's at 1-1 himself. His own 2-2 is nearly completed. Now, usually if you see a player go for mech, it's difficult for them to get up the upgrades they need, but so far so good, as the 1 Widow Mine right there are going to be hanging out on that ramp. And these rocks are going to get almost taken out here as well. Most likely going to be for this 4th base right here. And I think we see a 5th base on the way as well. SV is going to be transferring over for Whitera. Can't believe he actually already has this expansion up, soon to be running. He's got the gas there and good to go. He's also got a lot of cannons on the way to help defend that from those Hellion counterattacks. That's exactly what he needs to do. Algorithm continuing to add on command centers right now. 4 command centers to be exact. That is not an exaggeration. That is him literally just trying to race towards maxed out, race towards having a great economy. And at this point, what he needs to do is either scout. Well, actually, what has he seen so far? So he scans right here, sees a lot of gateways, is not able to see the warp gates, and the production capabilities of Whitera right now are actually quite absurd. Where are these Stargates? There they are right there at the 3rd base. And yeah, his production capability, his economy is absurd. He's got to be ready to go, ready to tango in the next couple of minutes. And at this point, I think Algorithm basically just needs to spot that carrier threat, needs to know exactly what unit composition there is, and then begin making 2, maybe even 3 more starports to help deal with this, because mass starport is got to be great versus this army. It's got to kill the Colossus, got to kill the Void Rays, and got to kill the Mothership. That doesn't leave a whole lot left for Protoss. And you have to remember that Protoss gateway units are not very good in small groups by themselves. What I mean by that is that if Whitera ends up losing an engagement, engagement. Just because you can warp in 10 Stalkers doesn't mean that's going to be enough to hold you in the game. I mean, yes, Protoss units do work in a giant death ball, but that still doesn't mean that you get kind of a freebie, oh, I lost my army, well, here's another army button. As much as people would like to say that on the forums, you know, your army is just not going to be as well balanced. It's not going to be as good as you would like in that scenario. Now, we do have these Stalkers over here going to be harassing by quite a bit. The Hellions, surprisingly enough, going to be coming up here, and they will eventually clean out some of these units, but the Stalkers able to do substantial damage already. So I think that's actually going to be favoring Whitera here a little bit, although he does end up losing quite a few resources in that. And here's another attack down here. Zealots basically running to their death. That is not the place you want to be if you're a Zealot. This is more like it. The Zealots are low on HP, but he's going to do his best to clean out some of these units. The Hellions should be able to clean up these Zealots almost with a one-shot, though. You can see very low on HP already, plus the Hellions already have Blue Flame, and 2-2 is done with 3-3 on the way. Talk about very impressive play right there, going toe-to-toe in the upgrades versus Whitera, who will just chrono boost the upgrades all day. Might be able to actually kill off one of these command centers. I don't think that's actually going to happen, though. With the SCVs repairing it, might be able to save it in the nick of time. And you can see the SCVs there. They definitely want it. They want to save that command center so close. And yes, they do. Where are the siege tanks? That's the real question. And this command center is still vulnerable. Might end up losing one of these, though. The Hellions have trapped the Stalkers. Nothing on the high ground. I guess there is Stalkers there now to go ahead and blink up onto that high ground. So losing a command center, almost losing a second one there. This is kind of a big mental loss for our Protoss up here in the top left side because, you know, he does have a lot of carriers out here now. But I think what I was trying to say is that Algorithm has got to be careful, but Whitera at the same time, well, I guess he's just going to free up more supply for carriers. So I had a slight misread there, but basically he's doing what Crank does, which is freeing up that supply for carriers. If you're wondering why so many players are using carriers now, even though the game hasn't changed as much as you might think, is because, you know, players aren't getting that much anti-air anymore. They're not going for mass Marine. They're not going for mass Viking. Instead, they're relying more on Thors, Hellions, and those little mines. I don't think we're going to be seeing carrier builds for very long in StarCraft 2. Basically, this is just Whitera punishing his opponent for not figuring out the metagame. Now, the main problem here for Whitera, though, is that the Viking count is starting to look relatively strong. Take a look at the units tab. We do have 16 Vikings, only 5 carriers here, so those we can focus down almost immediately. The Colossus, 5 Colossus there. So that's going to be 5 carriers, 5 Colossus. That's a lot of money if he miscontrols here, and it does look like he will end up losing 1 carrier. Down it does go, but does he decide to continue to engage here? Looks like the answer is not quite yet. How does exactly he engage this unit composition? Well, he needs to kill the Void Rays first, maybe even snipe the Colossus here, but killing the Colossus are just going to free up more supply for carriers at this point in the game. We do have 2 Stargates there. Where are the other Stargates located? Because I see 3 carriers on the way right now, and that has me all excited. There's the 3rd Stargate, and he even has 2 more, so a total of 5 right now. So he could be going for continued carry production if he decides to do that. He's got Stalkers to help defend the carriers. At this point, though, he actually needs to sacrifice some of these Colossus. They're not really doing him any good. Getting out of Tempest, that's a good choice. But I feel like these Colossus are just dead weight right now as, you know, he needs a lot of supply for his Tempest. He needs a lot of supply for his carriers if he decides to continue doing that. Even if he doesn't, he's going to need some sort of high Templar tech or some sort of Archon to deal with this big Viking cloud, because you do not want to give up full air superiority at any cost, really. Especially as Protoss, because then that means not only are your air units, your drops vulnerable, but also your Colossus as well can be sniped before they even get into the battle. What are the upgrades on the ships? Looks like 0-0 for now. This is something that's very tough for a Terran because you have to do infantry armor and shields, then you have to do mech armor and shields, and you also have to do air armor and shields. So to get all the upgrades, it definitely takes quite some time, whereas the other races may only have 2 different ways of going about it. Now, it does look at the Vikings right here. They are a little bit pissed, and they're good versus everything they see right here. Not so much on the Stalker front, but the Vikings are going to be doing lots and lots of damage. That poor little Interceptor, never to be loved again, will easily be replaced by a super cheap thing. But at this point, the Siege Tanks are moving way forward. He's going to go ahead and try and deny this expansion. Might be able to pull it off here as well. There's the cancel, so super easy victory for him. As long as Algorithm backs out here, he should be just fine. The Mothership way in the wrong position. Can he dodge the Vortex? No, he kills the Mothership almost immediately before a Vortex can even come out, and that means the Mothership core has to be on the way right away. That's exactly what we're going to be seeing right now. But this is not going to be a good spot here for Whitera. If he allows these siege tanks to move out all the way across the map like this, he is going to lose a couple of barracks here. Not that they're really doing anything at this point in the game, but everything he kills is less and less money Whitera has, although Whitera has a lot of money saved up. Let's not deny that. He definitely can just warp in unlimited units if he manages to get out the money and the production facilities. He's already got the money quite easily. Siege tanks here, got to try and hold on as long as he can. Does manage to kill off several of these Stalkers, almost all the Stalkers, Actually, it was all the Stalkers there before the carriers finally arrived. Does manage to get an interception here, but the Colossus is going to be doing a little bit of damage before going down. That's actually a huge victory for Whitera. Yes, he lost them without doing insane damage, but at the same time, the Vikings just didn't get a bunch of free kills in the center of the map, although very well might be able to do something like that in the near future because he's able to kill a lot of these high-tech units. You can see Whitera here is bleeding out money right now, but he does have a lot of money bankrolled, and what exactly does he decide to go for? Because I don't know if carriers are the correct choice. He just lost a ridiculous amount of carriers to these very cost-effective Vikings. Siege tanks finally got to get taken out. These units could even blink to deny them from retreating, but that is definitely not going to happen regardless, as it does look like all those siege tanks do get taken out. More units trying to stream up here. The Vikings even taken out quite heavily here, somehow actually falling way, way behind in the supply. But I guess when you're making 4 carriers at a time with that +2 shields, you're going to get maxed out here relatively soon. Mothership Core turning into a mothership right now, so that's helping his opponent get caught back up in supply. As far as, you know, Whitera may be supply blocked here relatively soon without a whole lot to show it, so that is going to give Algorithm some time. But how much time does he really have? +3 attack Tempest, +2 shields on all of his air units as well, which is a huge, huge victory for him, although this is a lot of Vikings, and he does now have 1-1. No 2-2 is on the way, but at least he is able to do lots of substantial damage here at any time that he wants. The main problem is that the income right now for Whitera, I mean, it's definitely doing pretty good. We do see much better out of our Terran player. Must be that he has mules on the field here. And yes, he did have about 7 to 8 mules there for a little bit. That's going to help keep him in this game. This is kind of how Terran works, where it's very difficult to end the game, but you can definitely get yourself a little bit ahead. The Tempest going to try and attack here, attacking from afar. You got to remember that they did get rid of the range upgrades. The range is currently 15. And so that's going to play a huge role in this upcoming battle because, you know, the Tempest isn't really that great without its range. So how can they actually use them? Do they use them to snipe the Ghost? What is the role that the Tempest now fills? We are about to find out as it does look at the siege tanks, though, sitting way, way back. Going to be killing off a lot of the units that try and stream down here. This is an insane siege tank line that we have going on right now. So exactly what is it that Whitera can do at this point? I mean, it's going to be tough with just pure carrier to end up winning. We saw how difficult that is to use those carriers in basically every Protoss game I've been casting lately, and you can see why. I mean, Vikings just basically obliterate them, almost able to 2-shot this carrier. I think that was a 2-shot actually, and he is going to be losing a lot of these Vikings here, but at the same time, the siege tanks are doing substantial damage. He could almost just attack with these tanks right away to try and knock out this expansion, because past that, he's going to have to retreat here. The Tempest have arrived, and they are not very happy with the state of the game, as we do have more and more Vikings on the way. I think we have 4 Stargates finally, but does not have the add-ons required, nor does he really have the money to make the units that he needs, but has managed to kill off this expansion here, and that's going to be making both players hurt for money a little bit. But at the same time, Whitera, you know, it's one of those things where it's like you lose $120 on the street, and then you find $1,000 in your pocket, because he's got a lot of money to spend right now, so losing units here or there is not going to be that big of a deal. Charge lots are going to be a big deal, though. Should be able to clean out these tanks quite easily. Now the upgrade pendulum has swinged back into Protoss' favor with 3 attack, 2 shields, and 3 armor. That's going to be making Whitera feel relatively comfortable here. He is also ahead in supply. Now the main problem is going to be that Viking count, because if he gains air superiority, he makes a Banshee, he kills all the tanks, all of a sudden he is back in this game. That's what we've seen happen in the past, where a single Banshee can end up winning a game that you most likely should have indeed lost. I forget which game I was casting, but there was a Zerg with a lot of Hive units, and he ended up losing just to 1 Banshee because he had no way of dealing with it, even though he was ahead by like 60 supply. It was a pretty whacktacular game, which sounds like another word for masturbate, but that's fine, as the army is going to be moving out here. Lots of siege tanks. 3-3 is now done, and what's happening over here, I think this is the same Widow Mine from before, but regardless, could help intercept any units that could possibly pass down there, and goodbye Stalker. It doesn't manage to actually kill it off, though. Looks like it did more of the splash damage. The siege tanks are going to go ahead and seal the deal on that one, though. They're like, I don't see what the big deal is, stupid Widow Mines. You don't need to replace us. We already do lots of splash damage to almost every single unit in the game. But it does look like the carrier is going to be moving out now, and he is going to be expanding down to the bottom left side. Easily could take the bottom center side, which is dangerously close to his opponent. But let's take a look at the U.S. tab right now. It is 80 probes to 45 SCVs, so both players kind of timid on making more workers at this point. I don't think Whitera is really going to need any anytime soon. As long as he's keeping his army spread out very well, then he should be A-okay. But for now, I don't know if that's the case, as we do have the siege tanks going to be moving out here. The Viking count is looking pretty darn good, as he does have quite a few out on the field. Taking a look at the unit tab here again, he is at 17 Vikings, 19 tanks. and 12 Hellions there just to absorb some of the damage as he is running very, very low on gas. And so that's something that he's got to keep in mind here, is if he cannot be cost effective with these units, that is going to be it for him. Now, Whitera has ended up losing more units, but he's been expanding much, much more. And here's a cannon right here, that awkward moment when you're flying these orbital commands into a bunch of cannons. And the cannons might actually take this out here if he doesn't react in time, because there are going to be 3 cannons here. Yes, he will. He's actually going to kill this off with just cannons. Not to see that happen very often. I don't know if it's going to burn down or what, but the cannon count right there at 3 makes it very difficult. And you can see just how immobile the army is. When a carrier army, a carrier fleet is more mobile than your army, you know that you're playing Mechas Terran. And down those Widow Mines go. The expansion down here does stand, but only for a moment. If he doesn't get a unit over here, it is going to get taken out here. For 35 HP, down to 20. Does he begin repairing it, or is he focused on something else? It looks like it is going to burn down here, keeping an eye on it. No, he saves it with only 10 HP remaining. Got to go ahead and repair that up. The Stalker here going to try and focus it down, but looks like the mules were way too much there and are able to save that expansion. Now, we do have Widow Mine over here. Not going to be able to do that much versus carriers. Even the Mothership will be able to kind of just brush this one off, and the timer hadn't run out just yet. Anyways, more Widow Mines are indeed going to be on the way. 3 on the field, and we do have 2 ship armor and 3 shields. Not an upgrade you see very often, especially in the 3s, but that's what it looks like on the minimap when you are working towards getting the level 3 shields. But at this point, not a whole lot has really happened here. It does look like the Hellions going to be in a world of hurt here. This Hellions versus Tempest Carrier, that is going to be painful to watch. I don't think they really killed a single unit, maybe a Zealot here or there, but they are going to manage to kill off this command center. Does Algorithm decide to engage? Does he have enough air superiority? I think with only 1-1 upgrades, that answer is going to be a resounding no. I don't really know how you're supposed to engage this army directly, but he is going to attempt to try. Does Whitera save these Stalkers? Yes, he does, but the Vikings decide to run up on in here. And can he focus down any of the crucial units? He does manage to get 1, no 2 of the capital starships here, and is working on killing off a 3rd as well. He gets it right there. And taking a look at the units lost here, you can see Whitera is still behind about 4,000. Taking a look at the spending tab, he's also about 4,000 ahead in the spending regard. So that means it's definitely going to equate out. And while he may have lost more, he has a lot more to lose. As a carrier count right here is looking pretty good. Needs to make sure to focus down these carriers as best as he possibly can. The siege tank's doing a little bit of initial damage here, but he has just enough Vikings, it looks like, to one-shot carriers. Ooh, ends up losing 1 too many. So now he has to focus these down as best he possibly can. And the siege tanks are kind of vulnerable up here, taking a lot of damage from these Tempests, but the Viking count getting lower and lower and lower. Does manage to kill off so many capital starships, though, and now more than 4,000 money ahead in that unit's loss, so it is going to start evening out as these siege tanks get cleaned up. You got to remember that versus massive is where the Tempests do additional damage. Nothing has been massive in this game so far. So it does look like the Vikings are going to try and take out the carrier. They do get it. Might even be able to go for both Tempests here if they do not full-on retreat. I don't know the exact math on this, but I can't imagine these Tempests doing very well versus 4 Vikings. And there's really no interception. No backup in sight. The Tempest is slowly trying to get over here. Zealot's going to be charging down, but these units have won. They are victorious. Now, how much damage can he actually do with this push? He ended up losing quite a bit, and all of this is still way behind in the supply and has no income to speak of. Just the 1 expansion down here, trying to secure another expansion over here, dropping those mules. But at this point in the game, I think Whitera might actually have this. He is about 60 supply ahead. He's got the Tempest to be able to clean up these siege tanks. You can see just how quickly that actually happens here. And the attack over here on the right side by these Widow Mines should be thwarted. I don't even know if they're going to make it to the base or not. The cannons are once again in the way, and they do indeed take those out. But at this point, we have some sweet siege tank micro here, killing for some probe kills. Manages to get 7 or 8 kills there. Maybe it was even 9 kills before finally falling. The Hellions, though, going to be doing lots of damage to the probes. He's definitely lining them up, but at the same time, does this even matter to Whitera? Take a look at the unit tab. He's got 61 SCVs to 32. Or 61 probes, excuse me, to 32 SCVs. Workers killed 35 to 47. So both players, oh, there's going to be the GG out of Algorithm. I was going to say there's not a whole lot he can do here. He's about 100 supply behind, but Whitera showing us that good old special tactics have always got a place in StarCraft no matter what. If you know of any players who are playing Heart of the Swarm, please tell them to send replays to huskyreplays@gmail.com. It's a super easy email address. I will check it, I guarantee. It is just Husky Replays, REPLAYS, huskyreplays@gmail.com. Alright, well, I was getting a little loopy during this cast. I don't know what it was, but apparently it's like 80 degrees in my room, so I was basically just falling asleep, which has nothing to do with this game because there was carriers, which I am A-okay with. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.